right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Sleep Like a Baby, Regressions, Wakeups, and Sanity-Saving Tips. I'm Kaki Brown, a proud mama and member of the Auggie community, the platform where parents come to find community, share trusted recommendations, and shop vetted products. We're so glad you're here today. And we know sleep is one of the most common and frustrating topics we hear about in the Auggie community. And today we brought in a true expert to help. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we get started. This session is being recorded. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We will definitely have time at the end for some Q&A, so keep them coming. We love to hear your questions. And lastly, by RSVPing, you've agreed to share your email with our speaker for any post-event follow-up. With all of that, let's get started. So today we have Mandy Treeby. She's a certified pediatric sleep consultant and the co-founder of the Smart Sleep Coach by Pampers. She spent more than a decade helping families around the world find the rhythm, regain rest, and take the chaos out of bedtime. Mandy, we're so happy to have you here.
Super excited to be here. I always love these sessions and getting all the questions and kind of sharing what I can to help with sleep because it is really hard to navigate for sure. It's a whole new world.
Amazing. Yeah, if you're ready, I'm ready. We can dive right in.
Awesome.
So let's start with the big one. What is a sleep regression and why do they seem to hit just when things are finally getting better?
This is a common question, and actually, sleep regressions are generally developmental progressions. So it's kind of an odd way to talk about something when it's really a natural development for your baby. And in fact, in the first 2 years, there's more than 20 developmental events that will impact your baby's sleep. And what happens is not that your baby necessarily forgets their good sleep skills, but as they're learning something new, that takes the front seat in their brain, and their sleep skills kind of take a little back seat as they master whatever it is that's going on. So at 4 months, really, there's an actual change in sleep cycles. And that is a developmental progression that brings them more to match like adult type sleep cycles. So there you genuinely do see more wakings. And it's probably the only regression that requires like a big intervention if your baby hasn't already developed some kind of independent sleep skills. They're going to need your help when they wake between sleep cycles, just because that is now a different phase of sleep. At 8 months, it's more to do with separation anxiety, and really they're developing object permanence. And you have a 9-month-old, I know, so you probably noticed that, like, when you leave the room, they're sad, and that can be just because you're going to make a cup of coffee, or because it is time for sleep. And that really is just that prior to that, they were a little bit like Dory from Finding Nemo, out of sight, out of mind. It didn't matter. And now they understand that actually you're in the room next door, and I know you're there. So I'm gonna call out for you. So regressions always seem to hit when somebody gets to a good place with sleep. I don't know what it is with that. It's always one with the other, but they're usually very easily explained. And with the right kind of consistency and approach, you will get through them.
Oh my gosh, amazing. And yes, absolutely. My 9-month old think all of that right now. So parents hear a lot of conflicting advice. Can you walk us through what's actually normal in terms of night wake ups and when it's time to make a change?
So, look, when it comes to sleep, 99.9% of the time, everything you're experiencing is normal. So, like, first of all, don't panic. Every baby is different. Even if you hear your friends telling you, oh, my baby's sleeping through, I even hear there's really different definitions on that. Like, maybe they're just waking to eat, but they're not truly sleeping through the night, right? So, I would say, first of all, most things are normal. What it comes down to is how you as a parent want to manage sleep and what you feel is manageable for you. So, for example, if you're feeding your baby to sleep and you're cool with that, and you're happy to feed them in the night and feed them back to sleep, and it's really not a problem, you don't need to change anything. People might tell you, oh, you shouldn't feed your baby to sleep. That's true if it's become a problem. So if your baby is now waking every hour and you're having to feed them and you're exhausted and you don't feel like you can be the best parent, yeah, maybe it's time then to make a change and start to separate feeding and sleep. But I always say that really comes down to what when you're ready and what you want to do. It's never too early or too late to make changes in terms of routines or in how you approach sleep that can improve things. If for some reason you feel like what you used to do is no longer working. I have parents who have 4-month-olds who are feeding to sleep and are going crazy because their baby's up every hour and they've got to go back to work. And I have parents of 2-year-olds who are feeding to sleep and have done, and it's fine and it works for them. And so, you just have to kind of understand where you're at and what you need, and then go from there.
Wow, that's such a refreshing approach that every baby's different and what works for one. I know we can fall into that kind of comparison trap when we talk to other parents. So I love that approach. So, given everything, what are some practical things parents can try to help improve their child's sleep, starting tonight, ideally?
So what I say is babies are creatures of habit, right? So, and actually one of the first leaps your baby goes through at 6 weeks is understanding patterns. And so they start to recognize it's about the same time as you see their first smile. But basically they start to see when this happens, that happens, right? So if mom's picking up the diaper bag, we might be going out. If we're doing a bath and a diaper and PJs, that's probably bedtime, right? So they start to recognize these things. So my first piece of advice is to have a bedtime routine. If you don't have one, it's never, you can always create one. Keep it super simple, same steps in the same order that anyone who's looking after your baby can deliver. It can even be the exact same story every single night, but keep it simple, and be consistent. So if your decision is, you know what, I want to stay in the room until my baby falls asleep, then be consistent and do that, right? Or I'm good to be in the room, but I'm going to be at arm's distance. I'm not going to hold my baby. Be consistent. And if you're changing something that maybe you used to rock them to sleep and they seem to not like want to be rocked anymore, it's often a sign that they're ready for a bit more space. And so if you make that change again, and however you decide to approach that, be consistent. And that's what we tried to do with the app, is versus prescribe to you, hey, do it like this, do it like that. No, what we do instead is say, okay, if you want to make a change here are different ways to approach that. And as long as you do it consistently, like I say, and I keep repeating the same word, but it is just so important, your baby will catch on. It might take, habit change is hard. It might take a week or two, but it will help. And that goes the same for timing of sleep. Like, as much as possible, it's not that you need to be super rigid, like the nap is at 10 a.m., but you do want to be in the range, just because otherwise they get overtired. And, it kind of becomes much more difficult to manage when they are undertired or overtired. So I would say, pick what you're doing, have a routine, be consistent, and you can start at bedtime. You can start at wake up time tomorrow morning. That doesn't matter, but with time that will improve things.
Perfect. Consistency is key. I love it. So, moving on, sleep can get very emotional, especially if we're all exhausted. How can parents stay calm and confident during tough bedtimes?
Honestly, this is probably, I mean, I'm guilty of sitting there and crying, like, oh my gosh, this is awful. And also feeling like bedtime should be a really nice bonding time, but almost dreading having to go in and deal with it. The first thing I would say is be kind to yourself. You're not alone. Everyone has gone through some tough times. And often when bedtime gets tough, it's more habit and behavior than it is anything you're doing wrong. So again, it goes back to that consistency. I would say my first advice is be rested before you make a change. So try and get yourself, and I know it's easy to say sleep when the baby sleeps or do this, but if you can have someone come over and you get a little nap before you have to go deal with, I'm going to be 100% consistent at bedtime. Or if your partner can do it and you can just take a walk and not even have to listen to the baby monitor while they maybe do a more difficult bedtime, which is often, if you've been nursing or breastfeeding, your baby can smell that milk. So as soon as you're nearby, they will become, more heightened and more elevated in terms of their protesting. So sometimes not being there is actually easier on them and on you and on bedtime. But I would say get some rest, know that it will pass. And again, it goes back to the consistency, but whatever you've chosen, stick at it. Because I see a lot of the times parents get fatigued. They're like, I want to do, bedtime routine fading. It can take 6 or 8 weeks of consistency with that approach because it's very hands-on, and they get fatigued in a week, or because it's just too hard to stick with it. And sometimes doing a more structured approach, it's a little faster, and they can actually manage it for that, say, 2 to 3 weeks that you need to be consistent. So I always say go in with your eyes open too as to what you're signing up for. But being rested is key. If you're tired, forget it. You're going to cave. That baby's getting fed to sleep, and you're going to repeat it again tomorrow or whatever it is. And you end up in this kind of vicious cycle of just being absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, that's amazing. Along those same lines, though, what advice do you have for parents who just feel totally depleted?
Take a step back. I definitely, there's lots and lots of information on the internet. I would be careful what you Google and find. Of course, it's easy for me to say download our app, but in all honesty, I would first look at sleep balance. Like if your baby is really fighting bedtime, they're probably either not getting enough day sleep or getting too much. So, like, just look at a schedule for your baby's age and be like, maybe they were getting, too long of a nap, or that nap's happening too close to bedtime. Just take a little look. There's enough available there that you can, we have them on our blog available for every age. The first thing I would do is look at sleep timing, because a baby with the energy to protest you for a good 40 minutes is either not tired or completely exhausted. It's either one or the other. And the reason why they're able to fight so much when they're overtired is because, and I explain this to parents in so many different ways, but like if you've ever been out with friends and you've been out for dinner and you're at the table and you're like, I'm really tired. And then by the time you get home, you're actually not that tired anymore. And it's your body releases a hormone called adenosine, and it's the awake hormone. And so it basically tells your brain you're awake, as physically exhausted as you were 5 minutes ago, we're in survival. And that's why your kids become a little wired and they seem to have all this energy to protest. And people will tell me, but they're just not tired. And reality is they are really tired. And what happens then is when they fall asleep, they still have levels of adenosine in their system. And so they never get into a deep sleep. And that's when you get lots of night wakings, early rising. And so I call it a sleep debt, but essentially over a number of days or weeks, your baby builds up a massive sleep debt. And we need to kind of recover that. So if you're in that really fighting bedtime, I would look at your sleep timing as your first place to go. And then you can address other things from there.
Amazing. If you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the app and how we can use it to help us, if
Yeah.
we're interested. Yeah.
So we created the app. I was working on with a bunch of other parents. We were all working on Pampers, and as part of our job, I was in a global role, and I talked to hundreds of parents, around the world, in probably at some point thousands over the years that I worked on the brand. And you know, diapers do a very important job, and they're very important to sleep as well, right? In terms of keeping your baby dry. But I still, in every interview, heard parents, when you'd ask them, what's your biggest challenge? And they're like, sleep. And it just kept coming back to sleep. And we were like, there's got to be something more we can do. And so we kind of, went off and started to work this. I went to school to become a pediatric sleep consultant and started working on that. And over a number of years, we kind of built out what we think is a kind of 3-step approach and a very strong way to support parents in sleep. So what we do is we start with the fundamentals. So the app's going to take you through a short quiz, ask you some questions, get to know your baby, your sleep habits, and then it's going to give you a sleep plan that is really customized to your baby. And that sleep plan starts with timing at the center, right? So I've talked a lot about timing of sleep and sleep balance and how many naps and how much day sleep. So it's going to create that for you. And then as you track sleep in real time, its AI powered schedule is going to automatically adjust, move your nap, shorten a nap, move bedtime to help foster overnight sleep. And it's really, suitable from, the the day you leave the hospital or the day you're in the hospital, you can use it from newborn. What it's going to help you do with a really little baby is get over that kind of like where they have day night confusion and they're sleeping a lot in the day, but they're awake at night. So it's going to help you with that separation of sleep so that they get in a rhythm. It's going to address things like your sleep environment. So do you have blackout shades? What temperature is the room? All of those, are you using? A lot of people will have their baby nap, say, in a pack and play in the living room in the day. So we address all of those things. And then it moves into how you approach sleep if you want to start working on independent sleep skills. And that's a choice. It's an optional module within your course. And at that point, you'll get another questionnaire really about your parental style. What are you comfortable with? And it will try to match you to an approach to sleep that will best work for your family and then guide you step by step through that. So it's a fully holistic product that will work on like what I call the foundation and fundamentals. And then the added bonus of if and when you're ready that you want to start working on a little bit more independent sleep, I want a night wean, I want to do this, then it will give you the tools to be able to do that.
Amazing. It sounds incredible. So I know we're getting ready for some question and answer time. Don't forget to drop your questions in the chat if you have them. But what's one myth about baby sleep that you'd love to debunk for us today?
I think I have two, if that's okay. One of them is when babies sleep through the night, like everyone has this different answer. And reality is it's somewhere between 5 and 9 months that your baby is capable of sleeping through. But every baby is different. There are growth spurts in that time. And even a baby that didn't feed in the night, maybe even at 3 months, might suddenly need to feed at 5 months, right? So it is a range. But as of 9 months, if your baby is doing well and your pediatrician is happy with their growth, you can night wean and you don't need to feel guilty that you have to keep feeding them through the night. They can sustain a full night. So that's kind of one. And there's a lot of noise in the system and almost a little bit of competition. Like my baby's sleeping through and you're like, oh my gosh, mine isn't. Like, what am I supposed to do? What's wrong with my baby? The second one is that like solving sleep comes down to leaving your baby to cry. And I hear a lot of like, oh, well, that's cried out. Like that's cried out. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, not meet my baby's needs. And I just love to bring this up because I think it's so important that everyone knows that there are so many things you can do to help your baby sleep without leaving them to cry it out and try to self-settle. Of course, that is a method that people do use, and sometimes it's very effective and it's really a short burst of crying, but it isn't like when I think about addressing sleep, you even heard me as we've been talking, I'm like, okay, what's the bedtime routine? Where are the sleep timings? And you'll see that, and I have it with people using our app. There are so many people that without ever using any approach to sleep are able to get their baby to fall asleep by themselves in 5 to 10 minutes just by changing bedtime. So it really is taking a holistic approach and really thinking it through is very different to just being like, I'm going to leave my baby to cry. Because I'll say to people like, of course, if you leave a baby who isn't tired to fall asleep, how long do you think it'll take them? How long would it take you if you're not tired to fall asleep, right? So you have to get it all right before you start to attempt to do any sort of independent sleep work.
Great. I love that. Like I mentioned, I have a 9-month-old. Sleep has always been a challenge for us, specifically independently falling asleep in her crib. And we just popped a tooth this weekend, so it's been a whole thing. So any tips for getting that kind of more independent, I can fall asleep, other than kind of the consistency piece that you mentioned, and making
Are
sure
you
that
doing
she's
two
tired.
naps right now? Do you do
Yes.
two naps today? And what times
Yes.
wake up in the morning?
Usually around 8 is what time she wakes up.
Okay. So if you're doing two naps that add up to like 2 to 3 hours and wake up's 8, her bedtime needs to be 9 or close to 9. So even though earlier bedtimes are better, mostly because the only non-REM sleep they get all night is before midnight. That's actually true for all of us. So their deepest and most restorative sleep happens before midnight. And that's why you'll often hear people recommend earlier bedtimes. But if you want to have I'm assuming maybe bedtime is around 7:38 for you guys. Usually people start around then. It means that she hasn't had time to build up the sleep pressure in the day as she goes down at that bedtime. So you have a couple of options. You could start your day at 7:30 and then aim for an 8:30 bedtime, kind of around there, or start your day at 7. And already that would start to give you just a little bit more sleep pressure when it comes to going down at bedtime. And then, of course, we could go into her sleep environment and how you do your bedtime routine and how she falls asleep and things like that. But I would first address the timing.
Oh my gosh, that's so helpful. Yeah, 8 is kind of our go-to bedtime, and that's just kind of where we're always aiming for. So that's great to know. Um, I know you guys have questions. Please drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear and be able to help you guys out.
And yeah, I mean, the other thing, is she waking in the night at all?
Yes, especially now that has that tooth, she really wants to kind of comfort feed a lot.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you are right at that cusp, like I was saying, at 9 months where you can cut it over, but that's where your consistency comes in. And it's tough if they're teething or they're sick. That's really hard.
Thank you so much. All right, Stephanie says tips for early morning weekend, 5:30 a.m. and a 4.5 month. They go to bed
So
between 6:45, 7:45,
6:40, and they're waking up at 4:30,
5:30.
5:30. So look, that's not that early given the bedtime, right? So you can expect, you know, around 11 to 12 hours overnight. So if there's a 6:45 bed and a 5:30 wake, you're getting close to that 11-hour mark. I would say you're probably between 3 and 4 naps. I'm not 100%. Normally at 4 months, you're at 4 naps. And then at 5 months, you drop to 3 naps. So you're in between that space. And it may just be that you're either off balance a little bit with day and night sleep. So either we need to push that bedtime slightly later to get your wake up a little later, or maybe there's not enough day sleep. Sometimes it can be that you've cut to those 3 naps and actually they're super tired by 6:45. And like I said, you get into that overtired window. So I would take a look at your sleep balance. You want about 3.5 hours of day sleep across a 12 to 13 hour day from wake to bedtime. And then if you feel you're getting that, but the waking is still too early, I would try what I call the 15-minute rule. So if they're waking at, say, 5:30, don't go to them or offer a feeding until 5:45. So keep them in the pitch dark for 15 minutes. And if they're upset, you can enter the room and hold them, but keep them in the dark. And then offer the feeding and push all the naps and bedtime 15 minutes and do that again in 3 days. And you should be able, just like a time change, you can kind of shift the schedule just a little bit to get you to a slightly later wake up.
Amazing. Okay, we have another one. How can I get my baby to start sleeping in his crib instead of falling asleep in my arms? And someone said ditto to that. So
Yeah, this is a hard one. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, but the most kind of gentle way, but it does take a long time, is what I call fading. So that's where you start to offer the same kind of comfort, but in their crib. So, and if they're bigger, it's also really hard to lean into the crib and provide that. But essentially, you want your baby to fall asleep where you want them to stay asleep. Otherwise, you often get the startled awake, where they wake up and they scream because they don't know where they are. And I equate this, I say to parents, I always have an analogy, but it's like you falling asleep in the comfort of your bed and waking up on the kitchen floor, right? They fell asleep, snuggled into you, and then all of a sudden they're not where they thought they were, right? So that is a very wild, like, awakening. So you can start by putting them in their crib, not holding them, but tapping them, right? And then slowly start to remove the tapping. That's one way. That would be like a longer process, but a more gentle way to separate. The other way is to do like structured time checks. So you put them in their crib and maybe it's a 1 minute interval. And then you enter the room, you can pick them up and reset, but put them back down. That one would work much more quickly. And typically for an older baby is easier for them to grasp. But again, I always say, like, it's whatever is going to work for you, but it is consistency and approach for that.
thank you. Our next one says, my 7-month-old boy still has startle reflexes. I heard it should go away by now. I feel like it's increased lately. Any tips to address it?
So it should tip the Mara reflex typically has gone by now. You definitely can ask your pediatrician, but I do hear you're not the only one, that it lasts a little bit longer. Um, you can't swaddle anymore, so that's also like challenging because their arms are out, and so if they startle, this is a great candidate for helping to soothe them in the crib, because they're less likely to startle themselves awake if they're already in the crib when you have them fall asleep. If you are transferring them, you can limit the reflex by placing them. It's also counterintuitive because their head is heavier, but you want the head to be the last thing that hits the crib, because the way the startle reflex works is it thinks you're falling, so it jolts, and so if the head is below in gravity, the body triggers the reflex. So when you do them feet, butt, back, head, they're less likely to trigger the reflex if you're transferring them.
Great. Next one. I have a 2-month-old who sleeps great most of the time, but has a terrible time falling asleep after his 3 a.m. feeding. He only wants to sleep on us and wakes himself up as soon as he is in his bassinet, ending up with an hour-long wake window and falling asleep at 5 or so. And then he wakes up for the day at 8. Any tips for helping him fall asleep and stay asleep in the middle of the night like that? It's
So
a Yeah, bedtime's not yet rigid, but tends to be around 7:30 with a feeding at 11, where he falls asleep easily.
it's tough. At 2 months, they're still kind of regulating day and night. Your best opportunity here is to look, and I'm just trying to see how your day is, but I would be working towards a 5 nap day at this point. I would be strict about wake up time. So, like waking them at the same time each morning. So, typically, it said, I think she's saying falling asleep. You want to try and get to those regular wake windows in the day so that they build up the sleep pressure for that overnight. Sometimes what happens at this age is they're getting extra sleep in the day. Maybe they're taking a 2.5 hour nap here, and you only really want 5, max like 6 hours of day sleep at this age. And that will reduce at 3 months to 4 to 5 hours, at 4 months to 3 to 4 hours. So it's getting less very quickly as each week progresses. So keep an eye on those, the naps in the day, cap the naps, do shorter, like 1 hour naps and spread them out. And then keep them in the dark in the night. It's hard, but keep it pitch dark for all sleeps. And then get lots of outside and kind of sunlight during the wake windows to help the circadian rhythm. It's in the process of maturing. At around 12 weeks, you'll be there. But right now, it's still got to do some work to get itself righted. And unfortunately, these kind of wake ups can happen.
Perfect. Next question is sleep tips for traveling for 1 week with time change 3 hours earlier. So going east to west.
So, normally your baby can adjust about 30 minutes a day, sometimes faster. If it's summer and I guess you're going east to west, it's going to be warm. It's a little bit easier because you can get them outside a lot. You can use, if they're old enough to be in water and go in the pool or things like that, it just helps them to be awake that way. I say start your day at the same time as you would at home. So even if you're like, super tired or whatever, get up at that. If it's an 8 a.m. start, wake then, because that's really what resets the circadian rhythm. And getting that daylight in the morning is like, oh, okay, this is my daytime now. And then try to do naps as on your same schedule. And a nap on the go is better than no nap or a badly timed nap. So if that means it's out in the stroller while you guys are out grabbing lunch or doing whatever, try to get that sleep. And then use an early bedtime if they're not napping well in the day. But for 3 hours, probably it will take you 3 to 4 days and you would be pretty much on the schedule that you want. I also say use it to your advantage. So like maybe you only want to adjust 2 hours and then you can have a dinner while they're asleep in the stroller and take them home and put them to bed. And you actually got like a little bit of an evening out if you're only there for the week.
Good. We put any final questions that you have in the chat, but What's one thing, Mandy, you wish every exhausted parent knew about sleep?
That it's just not linear. I think there's this like perception that if I solve sleep now, I'm gonna have, or my baby's a great sleeper. I see it all the time. Like, we'll make a social post and like, well, my 2-month-old's an amazing sleeper. And I'm like, oh, because it isn't linear and it is gonna regress, but it will pass. So like what I would say is like if you can be consistent even through those regressions, you're gonna fare it better than if you try to go with each one, right? And you're like in this regression, oh my gosh, now I've got to feed to sleep, now I've got to do this. So just know that it's not linear. It does, your baby will eventually sleep without you and through the night and all of those things. But yeah, you're gonna take some step backs along the way, unfortunately.
Perfect. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat just yet. Any final words for everyone? Oh, just kidding. Any tips for getting through sleep regression?
Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but actually, the best thing you can do for a regression is not change your sleep habits. So, if you were putting your baby down, they were falling asleep without support or without being fed, and suddenly now they're crying to be fed, the minute you break that, you start a new habit, right? So the best thing you can do is stick with it. Of course, it's super difficult to if your baby is unwell, if the regression is related to sickness or something like that, then I say you break all the rules for a sick baby, and not safety, but you break the rules. I always say drag a mattress into the bedroom so that they stay in their crib, but you can be next to them if they're in a separate room, versus bringing them to your bed or anything like that. And as soon as they're back to full health, return to your original sleep rules. And so that you quickly can get back, back on track. But it's weathering a regression is easiest if you don't change your ways. It'll pass faster. They all pass in about 2 to 6 weeks, but it'll be faster for those who don't change.
Great. Thanks so much. Ideal bedtime for each month old, 4 months onward.
So I always say bedtime's connected to wake up. So bedtime should always be no more than 12 to 13 hours from wake up. So if your wake up is 7, bedtime should be 7 till 8. And we keep bedtime flexible because there's this big thing called naps. And so if the naps in the middle of the day reach, like for a 4-month-old, for example, you want 3 to 4 hours of naps. As long as you're in that range, bedtime can be closer to 13 hours from wake up. If naps are short, like maybe they took 30-minute naps and you only got 2 hours of naps for your 4-month-old, bedtime needs to be moved earlier to avoid overtiredness. So that's actually the nice thing that the app does. When your naps are being tracked, it's going to move that bedtime for you so that when you want to put your baby down.
Awesome. Is a toddler too late to address some sleep habits we'd prefer not to have? Or in other words, how much longer should we expect to be practicing new habits before they stick?
Toddlers are challenging, especially if they're already in their own bed. I always say don't move to a toddler bed. Like I made this mistake. I don't know how many other people that I hear from do the same thing, but I was expecting another baby. I feel like now I need the crib back. I'm moving my daughter to her toddler bed. And actually, I would keep them there until they can climb out, until it's unsafe. Do not take them out of the crib because there's no benefit to you or them really. But toddlers just require more consistency. It's never too late. It requires better boundaries. So with a toddler, and I'm sure you've seen it if they're, starting that 18-month to 2 year, where they'll like look at you while they do something wrong to see how you react, right? And so when you're doing something with sleep, they're looking to see how you react, right? And so here consistency takes on a whole new level. And you can, I always say to parents, like, they will protest at you. It's very hard to change a habit for a toddler, in the same ways if you cut their banana and they didn't want it cut, or you unpeeled it and they didn't want to unpeel, like you're trying to how many bananas have you tried to unpeel again, right? Because they don't want you to do that. It's the same. It's just that you're more tired and I think feel more guilt when it comes to sleep, but just stick to it. They'll thank you for it later. And there are, there are ways to make it safe for them in their toddler bed, and make it still a place with boundaries so that you can actually conduct some sort of sleep training, if you like, to help them sleep better.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Does anyone have any last minute questions that we haven't addressed yet? You mentioned the app helping you switch up sleep if a nap is longer or shorter.
Yeah, so what the app's doing is it's got, when you wake up in the morning, it's going to show you what your day should look like, right? So you have like a, let's say your wake up time is targeted at 7, but today your baby woke at 6:30. As soon as you log that wake up in the morning, it's going to move your naps around, and try to get your day to a normal bedtime, right? So it's trying to balance those two things. Once you've gone through the naps, then it's going to adjust bedtime again, because it's like, okay, now I know how much day sleep you had. Let's do this with bedtime. So it's constantly adjusting. And some people, you can look at tomorrow and see what your day should look like if you're trying to plan like when to meet a friend for a coffee or whatever. But because babies on, they don't always do exactly as you expect, it will adjust for you, and it grows with your baby. So when you come into the app, it's going to give you, your sleep schedule. As you track sleeps, it starts to see, oh, I think you're ready to drop a nap, I think you're ready. And so it's going to make those adjustments with you, and help you get to the schedule that's best suited to your baby's sleep needs. And I think someone just asked if for toddlers too late to use the app. Right now, we support up to age 2. So, and if you're already on the app before 2, I think it works up to like 2.5, 3 almost. But no, it's not too late. And in fact, even if your baby was over 2 and you just wanted to use it to get the one, like the step-by-step guidance, yeah, then you're almost at 2. You could absolutely use it. And it includes, your subscription includes the ability to email me, believe it or not. So you can reach out to me and our team of sleep consultants to get one-to-one advice as well, within the app. So sometimes if you're just like, oh, but wait, my situation's a little bit different for this reason, we did include like a human element within the app as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Does anyone else have any questions about the app? Do you have a link to download? I shared it earlier in the chat. I can
Yeah, I
share it
think it's in the
again.
chat. I did see it. Otherwise, you can just go to smartsleepcoach.com. I think should get you to the website to start the quiz. But yeah, honestly, like uh, there's 7 days free. So, you can get a chance to try the app, see if it works for you, before you commit to a subscription. But it should give you just enough time to like explore what it has to offer.
Amazing. Right. If we don't have any other questions you guys can think of, then I just want to thank you all so much for joining today. And thank you so much, Mandy, for your insight, empathy, and it's been so incredibly helpful. I'm sure everyone can attest to that. If today's session resonated with you, join us in the Auggie community at community.auggie.com. You'll find other parents who get it and just a place to keep asking questions and sharing your wins. And don't forget, you may hear from Mandy with some follow-up resources, since RSVPing means your email was shared with her. Take care, get some
Great.
rest, and
Thanks.
remember, better sleep is possible. So thank you guys. I appreciate you being here. Have a great rest of your day.